Okay. All right, it tells us continue. I guess we'll have to click that continue button. All right, we're ready to go. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us for our July 26th Zoom meeting for the Brooklyn Tea Party. And we're going to have a special guest, a Republican candidate for public advocate. Her name is Dr. Devi. And we're going to first start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, so let's start off. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of
the United States of America
and to the
and to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one nation,
one nation,
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
with
with
liberty
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for all.
for all.
Thank you so much, everyone. All right, Larry, do the side by side. And
We got it.
remember, everyone, when we have, just put your questions that you might have in the chat area. All right, so we're going to start the meeting right now. So let me know when you're ready, Larry, with that side by side.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, right now I just see a phone icon on the thing. Do you see the side by side?
I see. I have this side by side.
Okay, let me maybe just pull up my video. Okay. All right, so let's see. Let me just make this smaller. Okay, thank you, Doctor, for joining us today. Dr. Devi, why don't you please tell us a little bit about yourself and, thank you again for joining us. We appreciate your time. And so how are you doing tonight?
Oh, good. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And well, I can tell you a little bit more background. So I'm a pain physician. So basically, I treat patients with cancer-related pain, herniated discs. I've treated combat veterans for a long time at different VA hospitals, including in the city, the Bronx VA, Brooklyn VA, Manhattan VA. I've treated prisoners of war. I've treated a lot of people with a lot of different types of pain. But just to tell a story, so what that means, I mainly do nerve blocks and other spine injections, but it also gives me the ability, for example, to prescribe larger amounts of medications like OxyContin, fentanyl, methadone, which is not my primary sort of way of managing pain, but before the opioid crisis, about, let's say, 13 years ago, I'll say what had happened to me was that a patient came to me and told me that if I didn't start prescribing large amounts of OxyContin to him and FedExing it to him, that he would find me in the bathroom, women's bathroom, that he would torture me, that he would kill my children in front of me, and then he would kill me afterwards.
Oh
and yeah, so essentially that wasn't a one-off thing actually either. A lot of the other physicians that worked in our division were getting threatened. One had been tasered. Nurse said that she had also been threatened. So this was a relatively, unfortunately, common occurrence. Now I didn't have children at that time, but that person didn't know that. So we were getting threats, and then I asked the administration sort of about this, and it went kind of up a few different levels. But what we were told is that because of the patient privacy law, HIPAA, that we couldn't actually call law enforcement, because if I reported either the patient's name or ID'd the patients, like gave them all the information, date of birth and all the other information that we had, that itself was a federal crime, because HIPAA and patient privacy laws are federal. So if I reported that information, that it was a federal crime. But on the other hand, if the patient was being investigated, that would be sort of an investigation. So we didn't know for sure if that person was committing a crime or not. So the reason I tell this story is because it showed me at that time that there's something wrong with some of our laws, that sometimes they protect the wrongdoer, and that some of these sort of protocols don't make a lot of sense, but there's not always something that we can do. And at the time, I just thought, okay, maybe this is some kind of glitch in the system, and just sort of, thought about it that way. But, that kind of put it at the back of my mind at that time. Now, what happened over time is that we saw the opioid crisis sort of develop, and I think that the patient privacy laws, I'm in favor of patient privacy, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but at that time, they sort of protected a lot of people that might have been drug dealers who were coming in specifically with the intention of getting these medications. I mean, some of these folks said, why should I risk my life on the street if I can get these drugs from you for free, high quality drugs. So what I'm seeing now with COVID and with other things, especially before I decided to run, is that I think we see the same unfairness, that there are a lot of laws that are being passed that on the surface seem like they might make sense, but the nuances aren't really being looked at, and they're really unfair to some people. And so, we really need people. It doesn't have to be a doctor, so I'm not suggesting that this is a medical problem, but we really need people to look at the laws more carefully, people who care about other folks and are willing to spend the effort and be thorough and look at it and look at the nuances and see what we can do to try to address some of these problems. When I look at a lot of the problems in society, so if you look at public safety, I think a lot of folks are bringing up mental illness. Now, I think that is a factor. I don't think that's the entire problem. But if we look at folks who are sociopaths, there are some people who are predators. That's not a mental illness, So we need to separate out who is it that is maybe a sadist who likes hurting people, who's a sociopath that just lacks empathy, and who is a person that actually might have a mental illness that might benefit from treatment. Because even then, it doesn't mean that you necessarily have to give the person a pass in terms of committing a crime. Could actually maybe bring them in and then negotiate with them, perhaps that they need to get treatment, right? That either if they're a danger to themselves or they're endangering others, that maybe they should, they should either decide to get treatment or they have to be punished for the crime that they're committing. So I think that's something where having someone with a medical background could help. When I think about homelessness, also, a lot of people become homeless before they end up on the street because they have problems with medical debt, problems with disability, problems with medical illness. So again, something where having a medical background might help. And of course, we're dealing with all of these issues with COVID, with mask mandates, with mandatory vaccinations, just a lot of things where I think, again, it would be helpful to have somebody who has more nuanced approach and can listen to people and sort of be more thorough.
Absolutely. And tell us your background in the sense of your, like I've seen you on TV yesterday, you were on Trey Gowdy, and I noticed that you've been on many other television shows, like, for example, Dr. Oz and various other cable networks. How did you wind up getting on those shows?
Yeah, so I started doing these medical segments probably about 10 years ago. I think I first did segments for Dr. Oz back in 2011. So I started because I was publishing a lot of medical research. So that's my background as a doctor, not just seeing patients, but I was publishing quite a bit of medical research. And then Dr. Oz's show asked me to come on to explain sort of some of this pain relieving treatments and actually perform procedures on the air, which just in terms of that, I had actually told this patient, she wasn't my patient yet, but I had told her that, we don't really have to do the procedure on the air. I thought it seemed kind of high stakes. I didn't want her to feel pressured or feel kind of dizzy or, any kind of side effect on the air. But she basically told me that she had written to the show. She had actually written to Dr. Oz for some help with the problem, and that they had essentially recommended me. So she wanted to move forward. She wanted to do it there. So kind of had a backup plan where I would have, not done it if she felt pressured with all these people and this audience staring at her. But I did that. And then one thing led to another, and people started calling me for more things then. And then I actually got a master's in journalism afterwards because I had always been interested in health literacy and talking to people about these more complicated medical topics, because I felt like all people want to know about, their health. I think that's something most people have an interest in.
Oh, absolutely. Without our health, we're not existing, aren't we? You know.
Yeah.
So it's very important. So that's very interesting how you got started in being on TV. What are your reasons that you decided why you wanted to run for public advocate for New York City?
Yeah. So I've been a Republican for a long time. I've been a Republican since I was 18, so 26 years. But I had shied away from being as active. I mean, you guys have been doing so much work for a long time, but I think, my public service was in a different format. And then I think you have to go through something life altering to kind of decide, like, to change life's course, right? So for me, it was this COVID pandemic. It really opened my eyes to what was going on. So for 19 years, I've been a doctor, and I've been hearing these horror stories about everything that's going on around us. So that was not new, but I just was kind of, doing my thing, trying to help out however I could. And then during the pandemic, it was sort of like it was to some degree losing sort of one thing after another, not permanently, but at the time I didn't know that. So when it started, my business, I am affiliated with NYU, which means I teach there and I'm on staff there, but I have my own private practice. So with the lockdown, it's like a small business. So you start to have problems because we have to pay the leases. We have all these medications that expire. Started to lose a fortune pretty much immediately. So I thought, okay, well, you know what? That's money. I have to take care of the patients. Like, that's the more important thing, which people advise me, like, well, close the practice, because you're just, uh, if you're paying as though you're going to do surgery, but you're not, that's that doesn't make sense.
Right.
But then that was happening. Then I realized also, like, okay, I have a toddler, but I don't have daycare because daycare is closed, right? And then at that time, the situation was such that if you're treating patients with COVID, you have daycare, but if you don't, like, our regular daycare is closed and we don't have access. So I treat people with cancer, right? HIV, all these people in desperate situations. So I thought a lot of them might be okay, but there's a very significant number that will not be okay if I were to close. So I had to decide. I mean, I love my child, but am I going to stay home with my child, or am I going to help these patients that need me? Because if I don't help them, they're going to end up in the emergency room because they're not going to find a new physician in the middle of a lockdown. And if they do that, it's pretty much a death sentence at that time. And they're really sick too. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So I sent my child away. So I lost that. And then as things progressed, we caught COVID. So my husband ended up in the hospital. He was on non-invasive ventilation. So then I was wondering, is he going to be okay? And then I caught COVID while I was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And at this point, yeah. So then I was wondering, is my baby going to be okay? Am I going to be okay? And I'll just add, so at this point, like right before we caught it, was ironic because for 8 months, I didn't see my child at all. People were talking about drive-bys and other things to see their kid, but like I couldn't actually visit her because it wasn't a transportation issue. It was because she was staying with my parents who were older and they had their medical problems. So if I went to visit her, I could have infected them because I didn't know if I might have it.
Right.
So that would have been a problem. And then on top of that, a drive-by, she's 2. So if she sees us and we leave, that's not going to be good for her either.
Right. Sure.
So when she came back right before the baby was supposed to be born, I thought, okay, we don't want her to feel like she's replaced. So we'll bring her back. But that's when we all got infected. So what happened at that point was, because my husband was hospitalized and, we didn't know if he's going to make it, and I was having contractions, I called the city because I thought, they're checking on you all anyway because you're infected. I thought, oh God, I have to get help for her because I can't give her to anybody. She's got COVID too. And they told me if I can't provide a safe environment for my child, they're going to take her from me. The city is going to take her from me. And I thought, like, what is this? Yeah, like not because I'm a doctor, but only because I'm a person who, sacrificed for the people of this city.
Right.
I tried to help people when they needed it. Like, I stepped up to give people jobs too during the past year. I also did research too to try to find answers for COVID. that at this time, the one time like I needed help for my child, is the answer an orphanage or something like that. All I need is somebody to help while I'm giving birth, but that was the answer. So I thought something needs to change in the mentality of our government, like our leaders. And then I didn't think of running for office then, but
Right.
after I survived that and thought about all this, then I thought, something has to change, and then came to run. So it was that whole experience that brought me to this.
Yeah, it's very commendable, and not many people want to put themselves out there, because then their family and everything is an open book, and it's a lot of stress is that way. So we do thank you for stepping up to the plate like you did during the pandemic, seeing patients and helping out and running, because we do need choices when we go vote. And so that's very important. What would be one of your major issues that you would advocate as the public advocate for the people?
So we were talking about public safety, but I will add one other thing. I think very few people talk about the scam artists that are out there. I don't think that's really often discussed as part of a political platform, but to me, especially talking to the patients and even in daily life, I feel like this is something that's very disruptive to everybody. Okay, so even for myself, almost every day, I feel like I'm targeted by some scam artist or another, by somebody who is, it started out with the auto, car warranty.
I just got that before the thing started. They called me, it said scam.
Yeah.
It was very nice of them.
Yeah, the car warranty calls. Okay, so there's that. Then we actually have operative equipment here, so I get a lot of calls about like your X-ray tube warranty is like out, your, every type of equipment warranty is out. Then we have like the student loan debt stuff that they call. We have fake IRS agents calling. We have Social Security people calling, and it goes up different levels. So like I'm not under investigation by the DEA, but we have people. Drug Enforcement Agency. We have people posing as Drug Enforcement Agency agents, calling the office, trying to scam my receptionist into giving my information to them because they think if they can't get it from me, they'll get it from my office. We have people pretending that like my family members died in COVID and left me money. So can they get my Social Security number? No, that's just, that's like to, give me money. And they have fake websites too.
Oh.
But then I thought fake websites of the family member and fake websites of the attorney who's calling, but so it can get some more sophisticated. But then I realized like the scope of the problem. So my employees have been scammed by people. A lot of them, like the part-time employees are students. So they're pre-med, they want to try to also, which I've helped, a lot of my receptionists have gone on to become doctors, medical school, nursing school, like all kinds of other professions. But, they have been scammed out of people posing as doctors who promised them a letter of recommendation. So we have patients who got scammed by someone who said they had to declutter their apartments, like older people, and then scammed out of that. People being scammed out of their homes and all kinds of possessions. I don't want to go on about all the scams.
Oh, I mean, it's true. There's the scams are ridiculous. I mean, doesn't it feel good to feel popular, right? Because all these people are just calling you. You're like, wow, I'm so popular. I wasn't this popular in high school. Isn't this wonderful? Apparently not.
But my idea for this is that nobody really knows exactly who to call, right? Like some people will call the police, some people will call the district attorney, some people call the attorney general, the bank, federal FCC, like they'll call them consumer affairs. It's just very confusing who to call, what to do. But at least when I worked at the VA, so this would happen there too. Completely different example, but this would happen where someone came in with low back pain. Depending on who you saw first, you might see the orthopedic surgeon, the neurosurgeon, the physical therapist, primary care, and everybody would get different types of treatment depending on who they saw, but it didn't really make sense. They should get the same treatment regardless of where they come into the system.
Right.
So the way we solved it is that we all kind of talked together, and each group gave some resources from their budget to form some kind of algorithm and process and get things set up properly and then address these problems. So some of it is cybersecurity, obviously not the city, like that's federal and stuff, but
Right.
I think we can, I think, if I was elected, I would go to these different places and organize something so that people would have an incentive to report it and know what to do, and organize that through the public advocate's office so that people wouldn't get scammed out of all their money and possessions and belongings and have no idea who to even report it to. Because even when I went around to get petitions, I felt like people were afraid to sign some
Oh
of
yeah,
them.
it's so archaic getting these petitions. I know that.
Oh
all
yeah.
well. So, oh boy, you knock on
Yeah.
someone's door, you feel like they're gonna release the pit bull at you. You know?
Yeah, they're scared because they don't know. Some of the older people too are like, I don't know, my children weren't sure if I should sign. Like maybe I can have a copy to show them first,
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's other states do it differently. They do you put down some money, a bond,
Yeah.
call it. I think they need to do that here in New York because truthfully, it's just so archaic now with COVID. Who knows if COVID's going to be part of our lives forever and ever and ever.
Yeah.
So they might need to readjust the way they put candidates on the ballot. Now,
Oh yeah, definitely.
yeah, definitely. It's just a little. It's not the 19th century anymore.
Yeah.
We replaced the quill pen.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
are you for or against the vaccine passports? And do you believe that the citizens have the right to choose their own healthcare decisions, just like how a woman has the right to choose it when it comes to abortion? My body, my choice, as they say. And do you think that the city or state should force workers to have the vaccine to continue to work at their jobs? For example, I work for CUNY,
Yeah.
and they already put it before the mayor made his mandate announcement today. I already found out, apparently, my campus through CUNY, Brooklyn College, already mentioned that on July 14th, that as of August 25th, we have to either have the vaccine or have that thing shoved up our nose every week for a test. Now, I know that it's going to not end there. When you give these people the power to dictate things, they're going to not stop there. What they're going to do is they're going to be punch drunk with power once President Biden, who already announced about 4 days ago that the emergency use is going to disappear pretty soon. It's going to be approved by the FDA pretty soon for full use. And once that happens, once that power is given and no more loophole for these dictators, so to speak, once they have that power in their hands to do so, for example, at my job, since I'm in the union, what they'll probably do, in my opinion, is say this: all right, instead of that test every week, now you need to have that vaccine. You have a year to get it. You're going to be on unpaid administrative leave. That means no benefits, no nothing. I'm 6 years away from my pension. And I don't feel personally comfortable. I know some people have their ideas of the vaccine, that it works, whatever. And that's a personal choice that people have. Even doctors vary in their opinion. And that's fine. Look, all I'm saying is this: it should be the choice of the individual through their healthcare decision or through their own ailments or whatever they feel. Maybe they just don't feel comfortable. They don't want to be a science experiment. We don't want to be. We don't want to be the next Tuskegee Airmen. We don't want to be the next Vietnam soldiers with the Agent Orange. You know what I'm saying? We don't want to be a science experiment. So the question is, what's your thoughts on it?
Yeah. So I'm against mandatory vaccinations. I'm against the vaccine passport. So just to differentiate the two things. So I think the vaccine works. I think that's why things are reopening. I'm in favor of the vaccination. But I am also in favor of informed consent and people making their decisions. I don't think that they have to go together. Like, for example, we're saying, what do I do like on a daily basis? So I do all kinds of procedures all day. I do all kinds of spine procedures, nerve blocks, all kinds of things. But I always leave it up to the patient. I never force these things on patients. If somebody comes to me with, low back pain, I give them options. Some people want to, they want to do something very conservative, like maybe they don't want medication, they don't want procedures, maybe they'll try something holistic. That's up to them. Sometimes they want to do something more aggressive than what I would recommend. They want to do a really big surgery. That again is up to them. It's only my job to give them the options, to try to find out, like, is there something dangerous? And again, to give them the options to decide what testing and what treatment would be recommended or appropriate. I give them the information and they can do what they want with it. So that is how I look at things. That, yes, personally, I think the vaccine is life-saving. I think compared to where we were a year ago, the reason that things are better is because we now have the vaccine. But I also think, there's no reason to have such a polarity right now when things are better. I don't really understand why the situation in terms of management is going this direction. So when I talk about management, this goes back to the fairness. Like my platform, I would say, revolves around this idea of fairness. So the way I look at it is that New York City got hit the hardest of this entire country. New York City, got hit the worst. And the people that suffer the most are the people that were hit in the beginning, and they should have some natural immunity. So let's just look at that for a second. There are people who have natural immunity, antibodies, and all the rest. For some reason, that has been left completely out of the discussion here. When I think about it, even my baby, as I mentioned, fought the virus in utero. She has antibodies. She was born with antibodies. My toddler has antibodies too. So, do they need the vaccine? I don't think so, but that hasn't come to that yet. But if it's moving in that direction, I feel like when I talk to patients about things, I talk to them about their risks, their benefits, and their alternatives. So risks and benefits, right now, I do not see a benefit for them personally to a vaccine when they have natural immunity. I don't know. The situation may fluctuate over time. We'll see what happens. And my opinion about that might change in the future. But right now, I don't see what exactly they have to gain when they have immunity, and also the situation around us may change. But right now, the way I look at it, the city is in a much better position than it was a year ago. So, and then I was on Gaudi, as you mentioned, so I don't want to say the same things as yesterday, but I feel like we have some problems even with the measures that the federal government is using in terms of the testing. A lot of the measures that they're using, I think, have to be looked at in a little bit more detail. I think that the way things are being presented to us seems to be very, I think, simplistic, and it has to be kind of analyzed further. So at least in terms of public advocate, that's my medical opinion, but let's say in terms of public advocate, I feel like every single piece of data that's given to us, I'm used to doing a lot more analysis of things just as a physician. Like, people say they have some symptom, I don't just knee-jerk reaction, this is what we do. I get tests, I sometimes refer to other specialists, I get other opinions, I look to see what's going on. I'm definitely in favor of a lot of discussion and thoughtful analysis. I don't just silence everybody else's misinformation and then it's just what I want to do. I think that is a completely ridiculous strategy.
In your medical opinion, should someone, because the way they're going to mandate it for me and other people at my job, once a week up the nose, is that advisable? Once a week test? Now, also, is the strips that go up the nose, is there, I'm hearing things, but I want to hear it from you since you're a doctor. Is there any components in that test strips that go up your nose? Is there any antifreeze, I heard? I don't know if this is some urban legend or anything, but is there any components of antifreeze in those strips or the swab or whatever they call it?
Yeah. So, so it depends, so there are different tests. So it kind of depends like what manufacturer and stuff, but there shouldn't be any antifreeze, at least from what I know, like there shouldn't be any antifreeze on the strip when they put it up your nose. Sometimes what happens is they get the collection and then they put it in something after to preserve it. so that
Okay.
afterwards it can be, tested or
So
preserved and tested. Yeah.
it might be the after the fact thing that you're thinking that the people are mixing up. Okay.
Yeah. So sometimes, I mean, like I said, it depends on the brand. I have to look at the specific kit, but usually what will happen is if you just take a sample of anything, that sample can sort of like die, right? Or it can just, or it could get contaminated or anything can happen. So usually you want to use something to preserve it. So
Okay.
that might be where you might get different solvents and stuff.
Okay, so that's probably where people might be getting that mixed up. Okay, I just wanted to hear your opinion on that. Also, we all hear this, it's coming. Apparently the sorority sisters are all upset. The Delta, like the sorority
Yeah.
house. Delta is coming, it's coming. Now a variant, isn't a
Yeah.
variant a weaker version of the original disease, the virus? And I heard you yesterday mention that the virus wants to live. It wants to find a way to continue. So it tends to get weaker to grow, to stay around, to be a virus. Is that true?
So just to be clear, so we don't know exactly what COVID will do, right? But for viruses in general, that's what like viruses historically, that's what they want to do. So viruses, what they want to do typically is like survival of the fittest, same as us. So let's say like from the time that COVID started, we've come up with all these different adaptations, right? Like we have figured out all these different drugs, like whether it is remdesivir or we found these monoclonal antibodies and stuff. We now have the vaccines. We come up with different ways to try to survive, right?
Right.
So in the same way, any kind of disease, if it wants to survive, it has to figure out different adaptations. So viruses traditionally, they want to figure out other ways to be more contagious. So you're right, like they want to become more contagious and infect more people because that's the best way for them to spread. But also traditionally, the ones that tend to survive are the ones that are a little bit weaker, because if they become more deadly, they'll just kill the host. If they kill the host, what's the point? The host is dead and so are they,
Right.
So they do tend to evolve, as a generalization, they do tend to evolve to become a weaker form. So here with COVID, everything is still new. It's only like when some time has passed that you look historically, that's when you can tend to look to see what's happened. But if we look at history, that would make a little bit more sense. So the argument people make about that is that, yeah, but if you infect enough people, you still will get a lot of deaths. So that's the argument for the vaccine. Just to reiterate, like I am in favor of the vaccine, so I'm not against it. I'm just in favor of getting, more, the whole process and more analysis so people can make choices.
Right.
But I do think that, in terms of the Delta variant, like some of the testing and some of the other things, we have to look at a little bit more, because as you mentioned, if you're doing weekly testing on everybody, people have no symptoms, and you're using a highly sensitive test, and you're going to get some false positives, and then that's going to confuse the picture. You don't know if these people are infected or not, but they're going to count as new cases. It's going to be a very blurry and confusing picture.
Yeah, and I'm concerned also with a weekly test that it's going to irritate my sinus cavity. I have sleep apnea, so I sleep with a mask at night, and I don't truthfully want to have some sort of infection, a sinus infection, or something along those lines by constantly having this thing jabbed up my nose. Look, I get it. I understand the reasoning behind it. I mean, we compromised a lot during this pandemic, of course. I mean, if that's the worst I have to go through now, I would like that the city, especially at my job setting at CUNY, they have offices of clinics. So I would hope they would offer it there where I don't have to go out of my way, so to speak, to get this weekly exam to come to work. Otherwise, I can't, go to work, or that I have to go to these clinics or something like that where I have to double park the car or whatever, how I have to get there every week so I could get to the job. I mean, if that's the worst, I mean, I truthfully don't want to do it, but my whole point is I don't want them to tell me that I need to put something in my body that I don't feel comfortable. And think it's just not, it just feels like we're in a different country. You know, elections have consequences. And as we could see what's happening here, it just feels like we're in Cuba now. Where are your, you were going to need passports, vaccine passports to travel around our country. It was like Nazi Germany where they said, where are your papers? You remember the Nazis would do that. And,
Yeah.
and they're going to say, where are your vaccine papers? I mean, it's just going to be,
Yeah.
I mean, history tends to repeat itself, unfortunately. And,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and you see what's happening in Milan and France and Greece, that people are protesting that.
Oh, yeah.
People are, I mean, I don't see it here. Maybe Black Lives Matter and all them that like to protest, they're very good at protesting, fine. Maybe we could come aboard together and we could see a common ground together and we could all protest together peacefully, of course, and get our voices and say, no, government should not overreach and do a thing like this. So maybe we could find common ground if anyone's listening, because at the end of the day, we are giving up our rights, in my opinion. Look, I understand you're supporting the vaccine. That's fine. I respect your opinion, and everyone should make that choice for themselves, in my opinion, what is best for them. And that's your point. I know that.
Well, I think, you know, so I agree with you completely. Like, I think that people can have normal conversations and have differences of opinion. I feel like it's a normal state of being, right? I even in my daily life every day, like I said, I have kids, so I feel like even my toddler, if I tell her, oh, let's get dressed and wear this and pick out her outfit, no, she wants to pick out her own outfit. You know, my 7-month-old is like 7 months old. She has her own ideas too about what she wants to do. I feel like everybody wants freedom. It doesn't matter how old you are, anything. So this idea that, like, you know, that we're not supposed to talk or we're not supposed to express any disagreement, it's very, very upsetting. And just talking to people, I think what's particularly upsetting in New York, which is actually the reason why I think we have a really good chance of winning, is that being on the ground, talking to people, and also just seeing patients. So here's the thing, like, I would like to spend my time campaigning. So 5 days a week I am doing that, but 2 days a week I see patients, because I feel like since I had been taking care of the patients during the worst of the pandemic for a year, I didn't want to abandon them at this time. You know, it didn't make any sense, but I'm trying to kind of see all of them on the same 2 days. But then I have a feeling all of my patients are either Democrat or independent. I don't ask them because I've never asked them before about their political party, and they've never asked me about mine, but now they know, you know. But they basically, oh, did I get frozen? Oh, hello?
Dr. Devi,
Oh, sorry, did I lose you?
okay, but Glenn looks to be frozen.
Oh, okay, sorry. Sorry, I was just checking. No, but I was gonna say, I mean, you know, when you see a physician, you usually don't ask them about political party. That's not one of the questions you might use to vet them, or vice versa, right? Like, so to me, I feel like the patients kind of care like who they're seeing. And since I said I was running, whatever their background, they're trying to help me by telling me like the different things. They come from all different backgrounds, all different walks of life. But one thing all of them agree about is like, they don't like this atmosphere where like they feel like they can't talk freely. Nobody likes it, regardless of what political party they are or anything else. Like, to feel like you have no freedom to speak, you know, to express a disagreement. And I think that's true even within the Democratic Party. Like, they may disagree about certain things, but they feel like they can't say anything because it's just so much peer pressure not to say a single word. So I think that when it comes to donations, which, you know, you need contributions, you need matching funds, of course, but like, you know, when it comes to those things, people are afraid. People are afraid to sign their name on petitions. People are afraid to like be on a donor list, because what if they get like in trouble, especially if they're not from the Republican Party. But when they vote, you know, nobody's watching them. And I think that that's when they make their opinions known, like, you know, that they are not happy with this atmosphere where they can't speak and they have no freedom and they don't know what's going on in this city. on a whole variety of issues. So I feel like the whole middle class is kind of being left behind here. Sorry, I don't know if I lost you guys again.
Hi.
Oh, sorry.
No, Glenn, apparently he lost his connection, so
Oh.
he's trying to get back in. So,
Oh, okay.
yeah, please hold on a minute. We're still
Oh,
here.
sure. No problem. I did see like a couple people so because I'm doing this on my phone, I just saw like a couple words pop up. So I feel like there's something on that chat function, but I couldn't see it while I was doing this. Should I look at those, or I just didn't want to disrupt the connection?
Hey, doctor, this is Daniel Ramos.
Oh,
Until
okay.
Glenn gets back, myself
Daniel's
and Lawrence and Larry will continue. One of the
Okay.
questions that we have is by Lawrence. Lawrence, are you still there? And do you want to direct your question?
Yes, can you hear me, doctor?
Yes.
Hi, nice to meet you. I was wondering,
Hey.
you mentioned before you became a Republican. How many years ago did you join the party, and what are your base? I'm a proud Republican, so I'd like to know why you joined us.
Okay, I joined when I was 18, so 26 years ago. And at that time I joined, I'm trying to think, like, I mean, the reasons have changed over the years, but at that time I had worked on Governor Pataki's campaign. And I grew up in Westchester, so I had worked on Governor Pataki's campaign. And I felt, I didn't know too much about like government and all these specific issues, but I felt like education was my main issue at that time. So I liked the idea of school choice. It wasn't particularly popular at that time, but school was the one thing I knew about. So in terms of my background, my grandmother had never finished high school. She was a business owner. She had a farm and she had different things, but she was a business owner and she never finished high school. And then look, like at that time I finished high school, but I didn't know what was going to happen. But I became a doctor, and I actually trained at Harvard Medical School. I'm not trying to be conceited. I'm just showing like what can happen in just 2 generations, right? Like with education. So even at that time, I felt like people should have the ability to be able to move around and choose what schools they go to. Didn't know much about teachers unions or any of that kind of stuff at that time. But that was when I was 18. So education was my big priority then. Why have I been a Republican throughout the years? The reasons have changed, but I would say right now, my 2 biggest reasons are I feel like public safety is the main thing. I'm not sure what's going on, but with New York, especially, I feel like I've heard a lot of different things. And I've heard medicine being used to justify a lot of things that I think don't make any sense. So we talked about COVID, for example, and how, medicine and science are being used in certain ways for political purposes there. But, crime, again, just the way like mental illness is used almost as a justification for certain things so that people don't call the police or feel bad if they call for help in certain situations. I've even heard racism being excused as sort of like, I don't know, an illness, which I think is strange. If someone is committing overtly racist acts, that's unacceptable. There's nothing medical about it. So, I feel like all of these things, I just think the Republican Party is much better at addressing all of these things. On top of that, I feel like the job situation, New York City needs money. New York City needs jobs. People need, money to flow in. And we have all the talent and all the resources to be able to do this. But something is wrong with the way that we're addressing problems. So this is where, again, I say like, failed policies and mismanagement. So I'll just give you an example. Like, again, being a doctor, like this is what I've seen. So I have a medical practice. And as I said, the first place where I started noticing problems during COVID was with my business, my child and my business. But with the business, okay. So, food, water, and medication. So I have to order supplies and other things. So, a lot of people are staying at home and, we need medical supplies. So all of a sudden the medical supplies went up about 400% in terms of costs. And I called these distributors. There's some big ones. McKesson is one, for example, but there are others that order from. So I called them and I asked, what's going on? Why are the supplies so expensive? We're not even talking about PPE, which was completely unavailable at that time, but just other things. And they said it's because the congestion taxes and tolls are so high that for them to send these trucks from outside the city into the city, it's so super expensive that they're putting all the costs on us as a medical office. So I said, well, how did that happen? Did they go up on the congestion taxes at this time? So they said, no, but if all the other offices are closed, what they used to do was divide it across like all the offices that were open. But if a lot of offices are closed, then only the hospitals and medical offices that are still trying to treat sick patients are open, then they absorb the majority of the cost. So then everything costs so much more. So I thought that's ridiculous. Even now, a lot of the Democrat candidates are talking about increasing congestion pricing. I don't understand how that's possible in the middle of a crisis, especially for food and water and medications. I mean, think of all these restaurants that are struggling. It's the same problem. These threats of lockdowns make no sense. Like all our perishables. So for us, these are medications and drugs, like they expire, they have an expiration date. So we lost tens of thousands of dollars just because everything expired within that window. So pharmacies, I am sure that patients are not getting their medications on time because pharmacies don't want to order large supplies of medications, because if we have another lockdown, that's again, a pharmacy could be millions of dollars lost, just during the lockdown, because everything will expire during that time. So nobody wants to be left holding the bag with these things. And then they wait for the patient to come pick up the medication. And only at that time do they order, most likely. So you have a lot of these problems that appear that don't have to be there, shortages that don't make any sense. So the Republican Party that kind of thinks about this is much better at managing these types of problems, and also is willing to listen and consider this. I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the Democratic Party generally is not as open to hearing any of this. So for many reasons, I've been a Republican, like I said, for 26 years. Yeah.
I've got you beat by a few years, but I'm glad you're with us.
I couldn't have joined earlier. I couldn't have joined earlier than you, Ian.
Doctor,
I agree with everything you said, and I appreciate what you're doing. So good luck in the race, and we'll support you.
Thank you.
Doctor, it's Glenn Nocera again. Do you hear me?
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Glenn.
Okay, I'm on by phone. For some reason, my internet got knocked out, and well, that's another issue, infrastructure, right? So, so right now I'm doing it by phone, and so I had a couple more questions, and one was a lot of people might not know that the public advocate position is actually second in line to the mayor. In the event that the mayor, when you get elected, cannot fulfill the rest of their position, their 4-year term over the next 4 years, what would you do if you had to take office on a permanent basis, their first act as mayor? What would you do to, I guess, whatever the situation? Of course, it depends if, God forbid, the mayor died in office or if it was a scandal. How would you, I guess, address that situation, whatever that moment would be when you first take office?
Well, I guess I would approach it the same way that I'm approaching this, that, my platform really rests on 3 things: fairness, which we were talking about, transparency, because I think what traditionally happens is people look at the leader or the candidate to solve all the problems. Not you guys, but just in general. But I think that we have a lot of talented people within our party and throughout our city that can help us, but it's so difficult for anybody to even figure out what's happening. I mean, look at Thrive NYC. Still confusing to figure out what even happened to that, it's unclear, but $1 billion. What happened to the money? Because there's no transparency in the system. So I think, first we have to know what's happening so that other people can also come up with great ideas that we can use. And then the third thing is predictability, because even if we talk about liquor licenses, or as we talked about lockdowns and things, people need some predictability to be able to plan. Even the school year, how can anyone figure out what they're doing for work if they don't know what's going on with schools or or planning in terms of the future. So, so if you look at things from those three focal points, whether it's public advocate or mayor, or any position, if those are your priorities, then it's easy to kind of lay everything out from that point. So of course I would look at, okay, this is what we need to look at. Let's bring in the rest of the party. What are we trying to do? What are the problems that we have to solve? And it might fluctuate. Like maybe if that were to happen, crime, hopefully, if Curtis Lewa, has his way, things will be under control in terms of the crime. So maybe we will have a different problem, at that point. But whatever
Right.
the problem is, kind of working as a team to figure out what do we need to do. And again, having a kind of a real in-depth analysis of the problems and what we can do to address them rather than knee-jerk reaction.
Exactly. And so in the event that you do become mayor,
Yeah.
there's a couple of hot button issues out there. For example, what the city council did, taking away the qualified immunity for our police department. How would you, I guess, advocate, since you would be the public advocate at that moment, but now the new mayor? How would you advocate to get that overturned? Because we all see what happened during the summer of love, as we call it, of last year, summer of rioting and destruction. How do we get law and order back on our streets? I mean, we can see the rising crime, and by taking away the qualified immunity, where the police could be sued and they could basically lose their house. I mean, what officer would, in their right mind, number one, want to become a police officer these days? Or why would they put themselves out there where they could get their jobs taken away from them and their livelihood in their homes because they're responding to a call, someone makes an accusation, and now you have no representation to protect yourself from these maybe lawsuits. It might be just lawsuit, or it might not be a just lawsuit, but they have no one to protect them. And as a result of that, we're going to see a more spike in crime. And we're seeing that now, and especially with the no bail, we are seeing the upswing in that. So I know it's a tough question in a sense because it's already there. And how would you overturn something when you have a city council made up of 51 members, and at the current moment there's 3 Republicans, and I think 1 or 2 of the Democrats might have voted to stop that, or 3 others. I think it was a 6 against vote. But how do we do that? I mean, how do we get back to normalcy? It seems like once something's taken away in this city, it'll never come back. They control too much of the apparatus, the left, and unfortunate, we are heading towards the new Detroit, as I like to say. Unfortunately, a major city, the Motor City, how that deteriorated into looking like some places in the Middle East, like Baghdad and all that during wartime. We are heading that direction. See, a lot of people learned something during the pandemic, and they learned that they could work from home. And well, maybe that's why my internet went out, because too many people are working from home. So they learned that they could work from home, and now there's no need for these big, expensive office buildings no more. So you don't need so much space anymore to have a business, so to speak, it seems like. So the real estate market's crashing in Manhattan, and a lot of people are just leaving because of the high tax burden and all that. So, So, like, how would you handle that particular issue? It probably would be like, there's nothing really, you can't really overturn it, but you could advocate that it should be overturned by, I guess, putting highlights like, look about crime. You're making where the police not even want to respond to things. It's just quite disgusting what's happening.
Well, I think, first, so I think one of the problems we have is that when Republicans try to argue common sense, which I agree with you completely, because even in medicine, so if I again draw an analogy, like malpractice is one of the things that doctors are most afraid of, getting sued. I feel like they do a lot of things that don't necessarily benefit the patients, but they do it because they feel like, I must order this test or I must do this to insulate myself from a lawsuit, because that's how we're trained. We're always trained to do things to protect ourselves from getting sued. But that's even in a friendly encounter where we are on the side of the patient. But most interactions with the police, like if you're committing a crime, you're not on the same side. So this doesn't make sense at all. That, at least if I was a defense attorney, my strategy would be to always sue everybody, because there's a good chance then that the police officer would just let it go, so that you could get your clients off that way. So as a strategy, what do you have to lose by doing that? So I think, from a different point of view, then the only way to convince first the public that this is a bad idea is first by building up some more trust. So we get like small wins first, that, whether it's, like I said, with the scam artists or other things, like the Republican Party has to build like credibility with little things. So I think here we actually might be doing better, because I think at least all of these overreaches in terms of New York City with the mandatory vaccinations and the vaccine passports that are so aggressive in a time where COVID is getting better and the city people are really suffering, it's really turning people against the Democratic Party as well. It's really turning people, who weren't polarized, like against sort of this management. So so this is the time where the Republican Party can step in and be like, okay, we are the reasonable ones, and we are the ones who will do these little small victories and publicize what we do, and we will make things better for all people, And then as we do that, then we kind of maybe more subtly say, okay, look what's going on with the police. Like, does this make logical sense that, why would anyone in their right mind kind of want to respond in this type of situation? If we were defense attorneys, what would we do in this type of situation to try to get people, out of a jail sentence and stuff? And I think that once you plant the seed in a more subtle way, and then people kind of come to that conclusion themselves, then they start to wonder. And the more people kind of see these different things, like where we produce like good results, and these other policies sort of don't, people kind of come to their own conclusion that this doesn't make any sense. And it's only when the people kind of push back against city council that then city council is supposed to act in the best interest of the public. And I think that can be changed. I think that policy can be changed. Because if you look at a lot of politicians, let's just pick, outside of New York, a lot of these politicians, they vote against, the police, but then they have their own private security. Defund the police, even was such a popular slogan. Like a year ago, I heard it everywhere, defund the police. But then like a month ago, they said, okay, Republicans defunded the police. Did that make any sense? So it's just sort of like, how quick were they to kind of switch that and try to ascribe that to us, So I feel like that, there is a way to kind of, to hold them to that and maybe bring that, turn that around. It's kind of
like your opponent, Jumaane Williams. He's for defunding the police and all that.
Yes.
But yet he lives in a gated community at Fort Hamilton Army Base on one of the buildings over there. So it's funny that as he advocates that, defund the police, he gets to be having armed security, as you mentioned, and then drives right into the Army base where he has to show his ID, I'm sure, every day when he enters, like anywhere else that is a military base and stuff like that. So, I mean, God forbid you show your ID when you go vote, but he has to do it to go home. And it seems like hypocrisy from the left, yet again, is a prime example on that one. Speaking of hypocrisy, in regards to our current mayor, with his wife, as you mentioned briefly, I think, about the homeless population, how that money disappeared, how close to, I think, over $1 billion from Charlene McRae's handling of it disappeared. Where did it go? Where is our media? Where is the media to investigate? And besides the little articles here and there up on the New York Post, where is the investigations? Where is where did the money go? And yet they get away with it because it's a one-party rule town and state. Look at our governor, for example. This guy is going to get away with it. He's smart in the sense that, like, whenever these scandals happen, normally, sometimes, mostly politicians just resign right off the bat. He said, no, I'm just going to stay because next week it's going to be something new in the news cycle and everyone's going to forget. And that's exactly what it seems like would happen in regards to our governor. But in regards to our current first lady, it's certainly that's what happened, because where did that money go? And our homeless population, you could see, is exploding. And I was at work and I had someone scream in my face last week. He came up to me and went, you know, like that. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? The place is becoming, or is at the moment, a cesspool, unfortunately. And it's a tragedy to see people out in the streets the way they are, but they are coming from different states. They know they could get over on our taxpayer dime here, and that's why they're coming in influxing, in my opinion, to come to New York City, because they know there's no law and order, it seems like, here in our city, and they could get away with things. And that's one reason why we see a large influx of the homeless population. It's because people are coming from across the country to come to New York City also. It's not like they were born here, they lost a job and became homeless. Sure, we have those, but it's also that people are coming from throughout the country to come here because they know we have no rules about anything, unfortunately, anymore.
Well,
So
and
what's your opinions on that with the Charlene McRae and that missing money?
well, the missing money, I think that's unacceptable. I mean, you know, first of all, the comptroller also should know. There's so many people who should know where that money went, right? So, you know, I think on many levels, there's so many areas where that money should have been kept track of. I feel like in my practice, even, you know, we have to keep track of every single thing between the IRS, you know, the biller, the insurance companies, the patients. Like, we managed to keep track of every single thing, for the supplies, for everything. I can't imagine $1 billion going missing. And this is the taxpayers' money that people are so careless with. You know, I talk to waiters and hairdressers who tell me that, you know, with the IRS, if they get cash tips, they, you know, they have the IRS like breathing down their back about how have they paid taxes on that money, you know, and it's like the IRS is after them versus the corporations, because corporations will get a ton of expensive tax lawyers to defend them, whereas they know, like, you know, people who are just kind of trying to you know, get by, they really can't afford to hire all those like expensive attorneys, so they'll just pay the IRS and then that will be that. I think it's outrageous that all that money went missing, and you know, it's like, oh, raise the eyebrows. And you know, we're wondering what happened. Homeless people are upset about it too, because I treat a lot of patients who are homeless, and of course I've been talking to more people since I decided to run. But my patients who are homeless too, like, you know, I mean, because that is the one thing, being a doctor, you talk to people from all walks of life, like, they are not happy. Aside from the money, they're not happy because, you know, they feel unsafe being out there too, because they say, like, there are criminals out there. So there are a lot of people who are homeless, like I said, like, you know, you don't just go from having a home to just being on the street. That's not the natural progression. Like, if you lose your job, you know, and you lose like your money, you try other things first. Like, you might stay with your parents, you stay with some girlfriend, boyfriend, you might stay with like a friend, sibling. You do all kinds of things before you've lost everything and then you're on the street, right? So usually there are other medical factors, psychological factors, other things might be involved. But you know, they are afraid to be in the shelter system because they say there are so many dangerous people. There's not enough protection. Before, like, you could maybe rely on like someone calling the police if there was something dangerous, but there's not enough police. There's not enough guarantee you'll be safe. So if someone attacks you there, you're basically done for. And I have patients who toss their canes, toss all this stuff, like, because I'm like, well, is it safe for you to walk around without a cane? And then they'll be like, are you kidding? Like, if I have my cane, that's like a target on my back for someone to attack me. So I can't walk around with that. It's better for me to look somewhat like, you know, tough. But if they think that I'm weak, they'll attack me. And we know that because we've seen even with you know, there's so many of these videos, it's hard to keep track, but there was even the one with the Asian lady that got hit by the guy. They said he came out of a homeless shelter, but like, imagine the people that were staying in the shelter with that guy that was a repeat offender. He killed his mother. Like, you know, is that safe for the people there also? I mean, it's terrible for that lady, terrible for the people who were staying there. I felt bad for the doorman myself too, who was fired. He lost his job. I mean, what is he supposed to do? He's not trained to respond to that. But like, you know, I mean, nobody asked, like, why is this guy out and about, you know, after killing his mother and multiple arrests?
That's quite disgusting. It's well, because there's no consequences, it seems like, anymore in this city. No, I mean, I don't have this person even out of jail for killing his mother, but this is the insanity of our court system. What's going on here, and that comes from, in my opinion, the far left. The far left controls a lot of our city, and people have to wake up, you know, and say, wait a minute. Look, I don't like to see what it's change your vote around, people. Every now and then, vote for the other party, like the Republican Party, for example. It's a one-party rule town for God knows how long. It's time to switch it up a little.
Okay.
Let both parties fight for your vote. If you're going to just throw your vote away and get nothing in return, let's say, oh, I'm just going to keep voting for Democrats. They're for the poor. They're for the poor. No, they're not. They're for to keep you poor, people. You got to wake up and say, wait a minute. We have to have competition in our electorate, because as we see now, the way it's unchecked, we have a tyrannical government right now in New York City and in our country. I mean, they control the presidency, the Senate, the Congress. Pretty soon they'll pack the Supreme Court. You know, and then we are definitely the next Venezuela and Cuba. One of our final questions for you.
Oh, yeah, I might warn you because I just got the low battery alert. I'm sorry, I'll grab it.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I sensed it. I'm also part psychic. So one of them is just tell the voters why they should vote for you over your opponent, Jumaane Williams. What's the difference between you and him?
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about. Aside from being a Republican, which is there, I mean, my platform really rests on fairness, transparency, and predictability. But more than anything, I mean, my opponent, we can look at his track record, right? So you might say, okay, I'm an unknown. You don't really know me. You don't know my background, but you know my history. I mean, I've been a doctor for 19 years. You can look at what I've done. I mean, I've spent my career, and even before that, you know, in public service, trying to help people, working as a doctor, doing medical research, not experiments, but research to try to help people with their pain. I've treated combat veterans, I've treated refugees. I actually had a red State Department passport to go around the world to try to train other people as an act of diplomacy, to try to train people in other countries about how to, you know, treat sick people elsewhere. And then my opponent has spent most of his professional career as a politician kind of working to promote policies, I think, that have led to crime becoming worse and to the economy being worse. So, you know, regardless of intentions, I don't know him personally, but I feel like the policies have caused a lot of harm in New York City. And you know, I think that we really need to look at what is best for New Yorkers, what would be the fairest system, who would really put New York City first. And I have always done that. I have sacrificed my child, my unborn baby, my practice, my husband getting sick, everything, my own health, because I put New York City first. And I will always do that.
We appreciate everything you've done in those areas and continue to do. And we appreciate you stepping up to the plate to run for public office for Public Advocate, the second in charge of New York City. I can't think of a better person to take that position, especially we're in the midst of a pandemic. Why not give it to a doctor, I say.
Thank
the
you.
doctor knows best, right? As they say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's have a different voice out there. We've heard from Germani when he was city council member. I heard from him longer. I was in student government with him at Brooklyn College. Nice guy, don't get me wrong, but his politics is something to be desired. And, you know, I think it's time for a change, guys. Whoever is going to be watching this video later on, please consider voting for the good doctor over here. We need to cut out the basically we need to cut out the cancer, what is our city government, and we need to repair this, because this is too many people are leaving the city. Too many people can't afford to live here anymore, and we are seeing now with this new COVID restriction. I might be out of a job myself because I don't agree medically for them to mandate a vaccine. So they'll probably find a way to say, you're out of here. And that's just disgusting in my opinion. But before we go one more moment, Larry, if you could reach, since I'm not on the video right now due to the internet.
Yeah.
Any other questions that we didn't cover? If we could do it quick before her phone goes.
Yeah, well, one more question since we're, talking about your opponent. So the question is, Jumaane Williams has exhibited behavior unbecoming to a public official, such as participating in BLM riots and looking to publicly feud with another Democratic PA candidate, Tony Herbert. Will you address this in your campaign?
I didn't know about the feud, so I didn't know about that part. But in terms of the riots, I mean, I think the biggest problem I saw at that time was that he had also sent out some tweets that said that, he was opposed to the parents that were trying to take their kids to the playground and the people who were trying to go to church and the synagogue at the same time. So my biggest problem with that is, again, like we were talking about with the fairness, that, if you want to support people's right to peacefully protest, I mean, we can debate about whether it was peaceful or not, but let's say you wanted to support the freedom of assembly, which is a constitutional right. Okay, but then you should support it across the board, not necessarily because you're an activist for one thing, that you only care about that issue and not others. You have to apply that principle for everyone. So I think, especially as a public advocate, you cannot be an activist for one thing. I mean, so I'm a teacher too. I teach at NYU. And again, like I said, I've treated prisoners of war, refugees, like people who have some horrible stories in terms of their pain. So when I've taught students and residents, I've seen this where we see people, most common type of pain is low back pain, of course, or osteoarthritis. So I've had to tell some of the students and trainees, like, you can't dismiss people who have low back pain and arthritis, because that happens sometimes. If you treat really horrible pain, sometimes you tend to think, well, that's the worst, and this is nothing in comparison, so like it's no big deal or whatever. You can't compare one situation to another. You have to take everybody's problem seriously. And I think, especially as a public advocate, that's the most important thing, that you can't, you can look at data and analysis and you can listen to different people's points of view, but you cannot take your personal sort of cause and decide that's the only one you're going to focus on and dismiss other people's concerns. That is not the purpose of government office. If you feel that way, then you can do that in a private organization. So yes, so I will bring that up. And the feud, I don't know anything about that, so I wouldn't be able to, but I would leave that, I guess, up to Tony Herbert. So yeah.
Well, one more thing in closing, Doctor. Is there going to be any debates between you and Jumaane? Are there any?
Well, I would like to. So actually, I would love to have a televised public debate. This is what I'm hoping for. But then I'm told, because I'm only, finding this out now, that you have to reach matching funds to be able to have a televised public debate. So that is my focus right now. I haven't reached the matching funds yet, although I'm trying to do everything I can to reach that. So anything that you guys could do, my website is Dr. Devi for NYC. So even $10 if you could. I really believe that we can win this election. The media, you can't tell that, but like I said, I have 2,000 patients. I have not asked any of them for money. In fact, I have told them not to, not because I don't believe in what I'm doing, but I treat very sick people and I don't want them to feel coerced because they depend on
Right.
me. I don't want anyone to suggest that they're coerced. So that's another thing too. But I know that they are working hard to spread the word just because they know I was there for them in their time of need. I don't say anything about that. I just know that they know. And, you know, I feel like the public in general, a lot of people support my campaign, but they're just afraid because of the peer pressure in the city to be identified as supporters of a Republican. And this is like within, you know, all these different communities. I'll say, like, if you look at the donor list, if you have access to that in the CFB, you can even see, I mean, actually, it's not the most up to date because of the disclosure deadlines, but I have over 100 healthcare workers kind of supporting the campaign, which you might say, well, healthcare worker, why is that better than anybody else? It's not better. It just means a lot of these healthcare workers have like my picture, or they're kind of recommending me to their you know, like the people they work with or their patients. So that is a lot of people. Plus, you know, if we talk about sort of, you know, the pull and like the amount of people within the city, that's a real chance for winning. But if we can get matching funds, then all of these issues we're talking about, crime, you know, the money, like even the congestion taxes, I don't think they even understand. I heard Jumani talking about commuters. This isn't affecting commuters. This is affecting
Right.
food, water, supplies, all the frontline workers, all these people that are seeing higher prices for just, you know, things that should be affordable in a crisis. So, you know, it's a chance to talk to people about the problems that they see every day.
Yeah, if you could post your website with the link to your
Sure.
to donate, please do so, and I'll approve that post, of course, and I'll forward that to different Facebook pages that I run, and so we can
Sure.
hopefully get you into that debate. We need you. We need that voice out there. When
Thank
people see you, they're gonna say, "Wait a second, someone's running against Jumani Williams." Yes. Oh wow, she
Thank
sounds
you.
intelligent. Oh my God, maybe, you know what, maybe I'll consider voting for her. But
Thank you.
the way it is we need to get the voice out there. The media is not covering anything really. They only
Yeah.
cover Democrats. They only cover the Democrats. So we need, guys, we as activists, we as concerned citizens, whatever you could afford, 5, 10, whatever it is,
Oh, yeah.
dollars. Because there's matching funds, and she has to meet. When's the deadline that you need to reach these thresholds?
Well,
Is there
so
a
the
certain
last,
deadline, or just long? Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
so they have a few different deadlines, but I would say August 27th is the next deadline. Then there's one in September. If it's after September, it's much harder because they have to, once you hit it, then they have to organize the debate, right? So there's one in October, but that may not leave enough time for a debate. So you can always do like an informal type of thing and, you know, online, but it may not get the viewership. Whereas if you get one on like New York One or CBS or these ones that you saw for the Democratic Mayoral Forum, like people really get to see you side by side talking about issues. So they compare the candidates, they don't compare other things. Whereas if there's no debate, people just they have no idea what is this position or who are these people. People tend to vote by party. So like you guys might vote Republican, but because it's outnumbered by Democrats, the Democrats just vote Democrat. But if they actually see people side by side, then it's a little bit different in terms of how people vote. People vote for whoever they actually agree with, kind of in terms of, you know, theories and
Right.
policies and stuff.
When you post that posting, if you could frame it to the idea of, so people would say, well, you know what, I will donate. Like, for example, hi guys, if you could please help me out so we could have a debate, you know, frame it in a way where,
Sure.
you know, like for order for me to have a debate with my opponent, Jumani Williams, I need to meet certain thresholds. Please, could you donate to
Sure.
my campaign? And people are going to say,
Okay.
oh, I mean, you can't have a debate unless you meet a certain amount of money
Yeah.
threshold. Yeah, let me give it $20. You might get an influx of cash coming in, and hopefully you will meet these thresholds. And
Okay.
so you get have your voice out there. It's very important. We cannot have a one voice system here in the city. It's decaying us to a point of no return. So if you could do that, we appreciate it.
Sure.
And in
I can put the
closing,
direct link too if you want. The website is
Yeah.
drdebbie4nyc.com, but I'll put the direct link just so that people
Yeah.
don't have to like go through multiple steps if that's the case.
yeah, I guess we could pair. We'll do one listing with your website and then the other
Okay,
one with
perfect.
that. So that way they
Okay,
say, well, let
perfect.
me know more about her before I donate.
Yes.
And that way your website
Sure.
covers that. So
Okay.
we appreciate your time so much.
Oh, thanks for having
It's
me. Yes.
excellent. It's been excellent talking to you. And I just a side note, me and the doctor have been talking about other things through text and also on the phone about these issues also. And when I first spoke with her, I said, my God, this is a genuine person. This is someone we need in public office. And when I seen that, I was very enthused that the Republican Party picked you to
Oh, thank you.
run for that office. And I'm very happy that you decided to run, of course.
Thank you,
And
Glenn.
that, and we need to hear more of you in the future. And we definitely need you elected. So whatever we could do to do that, we appreciate to do that for you. We would love that, and the city will benefit from that. So
Thank you
in
so
closing, I appreciate your time, and thank you again for everything. And I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight. I'm sorry I had an internet issue where I got knocked out for a brief moment, but I think Lawrence took over and Daniel for a moment. So I appreciate you guys checking in and stepping in. And if anything else, I just want to close the meeting tonight and say thank you all for joining us. God bless. Please check out our Facebook page, Brooklyn Tea Party, where we're going to have the links for Dr. Debbie and for her campaign to donate and to support her campaign and to maybe give out palm cards and stuff like that to help her get the voice out there. It's so important. And we need a voice like that out there. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us tonight. Good night, and God bless you all. Thank you, Larry. And if we could end the video, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Take care.